All right, Voldemort. It's been a couple weeks. We've both been a little busy with the holidays and
Happy New Year.
whatnot.
Merry, Merry Chrysler and Happy Honda Days.
Not sponsored. Um,
Could be sponsored,
should be spot now.
but won't be
Anyway,
sponsored.
so we've got a whole bunch of things to catch up on because a lot of things happened. But the very most important thing are my two new addictions. The first one is Letterkenny. It's that Canadian sort of show about the rednecks and whatnot. And then also my new discovery. It is Nutella-filled, thick French toast coated in cinnamon sugar.
Ooh,
It's delicious, and
you
it's
you know what
terrible
I'm
for me.
you know what I'm thinking about checking out eventually. I just heard today that they're remaking Walker Texas Ranger.
Chuck Norris.
No
I
Chuck
think.
Norris, but still, that's the thing. You know what they're also remaking? The San Diego Padres.
Oh yes, big time.
Yeah,
Let's see. Who did they land? Blake Snell and Yu Darvish.
and Hai Sung Kim, the
Yes, the
Korean
second
shortstop.
baseman.
Oh, and did I mention this was all in 24 hours?
Yeah, that was like we thought the Padres were sort of done redoing the roster at the trade deadline in 2020, but then they were like, no, we're gonna keep going. Who did they end up losing to Tommy Johns?
Mike Clevenger.
Yeah, Clevenger. So, when he comes back, and if they can retain some of these guys, it's going to be a pretty nasty lineup.
They don't even need to retain them. So we'll get to the short of it from. They didn't really give up much. They gave up
Yeah.
Zach Davies for Yu Darvish, but he's only available for one more season. All three of these guys they got, and also they got Victor Caratini, who was Darvish's personal catcher in Chicago. But they didn't really give up that much. They gave up prospects, but when you've already graduated Fernando Tatis Jr., Jake Cronenworth, Trent Grisham, and you have Mackenzie Gore and Adrian Borajan waiting in the wings, that's not really giving up much in retrospect.
Yeah, and even then, the prospects they had weren't even still like the top 10, really.
Yeah. Plus, with everyone they've already graduated on the major league roster, where were they going to fit?
Yeah.
Yeah, but the biggest thing is that Blake Snell is controllable through the next 3 seasons, I believe, 3 or 4 seasons. Darvish for 4. They signed Kim for a 4-year deal. They still have Manny Machado and Eric Hosmer signed to long-term deal. Tatis still has 5 years. Paddock, don't forget Chris Paddock. This is a roster built to take out the
and
Dodgers.
You know what's still lurking?
Yeah.
My boy Trevor Bauer.
Oh, yeah. I think this probably takes him out of the running for Bauer. But look at this Padres rotation now. It has Snell. It has Darvish. Both former Cy Young or Cy Young runner-ups. You have the Nelson Lamet, who could be who was also off his own Cy Young caliber season. Where did he finish? He finished 4th in Cy Young, and he's only just 28 coming in. Clevenger is not available this year, but
yeah, he will be.
But next year, in 2022, he will be. And as I said, they have top prospects Mackenzie Gore, that I believe is a 2-way player, and Adrian Moragan, who are really high up there. I believe Gore is in the top 5 or top 10 prospects in all of baseball. This is looking like this is going to be a gauntlet rotation to run through. That their number 5 could be a number 2 or number 1 on most teams if everything breaks the right way.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely the scariest lineup that I've seen in a while. Pitching wise, even hitting wise too. I still want to believe in Will Myers. I still want to, but he seems to be having like good year, bad year, good year, bad year. So he sort of had like a good year last year or this past season. So I don't know what to really expect too much for him
Hey, I'd
for
see
this
see if
year, but
maybe the Red if you pry him use him as part of a trade to get Andrew Benintendi from the Red Sox.
yeah,
Honestly, that get another young contact guy, jettison out because yeah, Will Myers could be, but also that could clear a payroll for say an extension early extension of Tatis. Although I believe that Myers isn't really. Yeah, he's only signed for 2 more years, so at 22 million. So that they'd have to eat some of that up.
yeah.
But if they
But
could
they
get
say
up,
pitching wins you a championship, so I mean,
well, is it ironic that the last moment of Blake Snell
yep,
is pitching losing a championship, or rather over managing pitching?
yeah. I
That
mean,
his
he
last
he didn't
moment
lose
is
that game. I mean, that was. I mean, but wait, did he technically lose the game? And I'd have to check the
I
box score.
I can
Uh,
check that in a second.
um, I, I mean, as much as you want to look at this rotation to start off with, um,
No, Anderson got the loss for Game
mm,
6, but he
what
did
what do
get
you think about
credited
their
with the run.
bullpen though? Is that going to be good? Because we've seen a lot of like analytics, as we sort of just talked about with Blake Snell, pulling starters and then the bullpen blowing it. I mean, we've seen that with the Mets in the World Series in 2015.
Well, as I said, we've seen this 2 years in a row with the Astros taking out Greinke in 2019 and
Yep.
then the Rays and Snell. But their bullpen is pretty well stocked. If they still have Drew Pomeranz, who had a 1.5 ERA. Pierce Johnson has had a great campaign. Emilio Pagan, Matt Strom,
Yep.
and that they have the Cal Quantrill. It was a starter in the minors, but they used him in relief mostly last year. Again, there's still guys on the market, so it's hard
Mm.
to tell. But they do have and also that relievers are rather volatile year to year, just as the Mets.
Mm.
But they if that is their weakness, it is not a weakness by much on
Yeah.
that roster.
Yeah, because I
That
think that's really the only thing I'm seeing wrong with this roster right now.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just wrong by well, we don't really have much to talk about. Look at it's as I said, like Will Myers could be not, but also they have Tommy Pham returning since
Yeah.
we'll get into this a bit, but the DH is not returning in 2021.
Boo.
Yeah, yeah. They also have Profar who Jerkson Profar who had a resurgent season as a corner outfielder. Could he go up? Maybe, maybe not. But yeah, and that infield is basically set. There you have Austin Nola, who not much hitting, but is very that's a short sample size. They have Hosmer, Cronenworth, Tatis, Machado, and Kim are all locked in an infield rotation, and
Yeah.
then Cronenworth, Profar, Grisham, Myers, and Pham are all in an outfield rotation.
Yeah.
They, I think the Padres just basically, if they want to add another reliever, they can. But I think they got not only their offseason checked off, but the next 4 off seasons checked off because outside of maybe a run at a top outfielder when Will Myers' contract comes off, they don't really need to do anything for the next couple of years outside
Yeah.
of injury. They've announced to the world that they are going to run at the Dodgers.
Yeah. You know who hasn't announced they're going to run at the Dodgers? The
Mm-hmm.
Mets. They haven't done anything yet.
That is not for the lack of trying. And let's get into that. Some of the rumors going around because after the Padres uh, did their thing, we did have some tires being kicked around a lot. Start off usual suspect DJ LeMahieu,
Yeah.
still not signed. Yankees and Blue Jays have been talked about, but as of the last few days, the Dodgers have started to be connected a lot to him. Maybe to try to counter the buzz out of San Diego.
Yeah,
But again, there's always the rumor that the Yankees will have the last say to counter. So maybe this all this does is just get. They've been said that the Yankees and LeMahieu are 25 million and 1 year apart. That's
that's a
if they
lot.
that not really, because if they go to 1 more year, that's that 25 million right there. So if they can find a way to get to that 5th year, maybe as a vesting option,
Maybe.
that might be how they do it. Uh, Meanwhile, our boy Trevor Bauer, he had a meeting with the Blue Jays the other day.
Yep.
Um, Although he he also has seemed to have every time someone does something, he's like, hey, looking good. You want me, don't you?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what he keeps posting on his YouTube channel.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. But Bauer would be a add put that on top of Hung Jin Ryu, Robbie Ray, Nate Pearson. That is a strong 4 man rotation that would definitely, I would say, be the best. I would argue say that would be the best rotation in the AL East. Like
yeah,
I know the Yankees have probably the best upside between Cole, Debbie Garcia, uh, and Severino, but
when he comes back,
yeah, but one's a rookie and the other is coming off
Tommy John.
of 2 lost seasons basically.
Yeah,
So you gotta see what's back there. And they also have not said that they are committed to going in heavily on Tanaka, which I believe is a serious mistake because
yeah,
he brings you a very solid number 2, number 1B behind Cole and Cole and Severino.
yeah.
But,
I, I,
yeah,
I, I really think the Yankees should be going back after Tanaka. Fans love him. I'm sure he loves New York. Um, I I just hope it doesn't become too focused on LeMayu that you lose out on other agents.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, and
the way it's looking, it looks like LeMayu is the big domino, the first domino that really has to fall before everything else hits. So,
it's the problem of it's hard to really tell because the Padres' big move has really been the only big thing this entire offseason. Like
yeah,
probably the next biggest thing is Charlie Morton signing with the Braves, and you wouldn't really call that any as good as he is. That's not really a
yeah,
top 5 big buzz news. Like
mm,
we're going to go into the next one, George Springer, but George Springer is still out there, although
mm,
maybe not much for long because uh, apparently Springer has offers in hand north of $100 million. He is still looking for $150 million, but it seems like the bidding is starting to increase, with the strongest suitors being the Mets and the Blue Jays, also being reported as those are the 2 final clubs. So it's this Springer's camp is basically trying to run up uh, the I believe it's Ross Atkins on the Blue Jays and new G and the Mets new GM whose name is escaping me, uh, but they're uh, running up the bidding between the two. And I've said this long all the time that the Mets would be behooven to get a true center fielder for the first time in several years, so that they're not putting a corner outfielder in that position. Not Zach Scott. Uh, Josh Porter, that's who their GM is. Jared Porter. But yeah, they would be behooven, and also as a Yankee fan, I would rather see him only 6 times a year rather than 18, possibly 20, 25 in a playoff situation.
now I gotta ask you, do you think Corey Kluber would make a good bargain bin pickup?
Uh, I would think he might be. The problem is the last 2 years he has broken down severely. So
Mm-hmm.
if I would if say it depends on what team I would be saying. If I was say the Mets or the Yankees, and I want to take a flyer, but I'm not counting on him, I might do that. But if I'm say the Giants or even the Giants or the White Sox, or and I'm counting on him to be a big high shot upside, I'd be a little more wary. But
Mm.
I'm usually one that kind of says, "Oh, I'll take the track record on hand and pay a little more than roll the dice." Like I would say that the Giants are probably a few pieces away, and could you and they could use someone of Kluber's caliber, but not if he immediately gets injured for a significant period or his stuff regresses as we saw in 2019.
Would you give him like maybe a 2-year contract?
Not a 2 year contract. That would
No, no,
not
no,
give him.
but like the second year is like it's like a club. The team has to pick it up, not for Kluber.
I
And
would
that
I would say only if he's really needs a 2 year option, because if I was Kluber, I would take at most a 2 year, but with a 1 year with a player option or a vesting option.
you would
That
take a club option.
No, because I would still bet on myself if I was him. Now,
Mm.
if I was in the team's position, I would not.
Yeah,
But that's just putting myself in other ways. Speaking of people who are on trying to make a comeback, Yaziel Puig, we're finally hearing more news for the first time since he caught the coronavirus.
yeah. Sounds like New York, maybe.
Se- Several teams, the Red Sox, the Yankees, the Astros, the Marlins, and the Orioles have, quote, varying levels of interest. And
I don't think the Yankees really.
I will say
should
right
be.
now, the Yankees signing him would be an absolute mistake, because
Yeah.
they already have Judge Frazier and Stanton as corner right-handed power bats. They don't need a fourth.
Yeah, and they'll probably bring
If
back Gardner too, right?
Yeah, if anything, the early off-season rumors connecting them to Michael Brantley are is probably their best move if they want another corner outfielder, since he's a left-handed bat.
Yeah, I'd be fine with Brantley.
Yeah,
I
especially
like
since
him.
he's another contact-oriented guy.
Yeah.
That he and LeMahieu would pair up very well.
Yeah.
But as the other clubs, Red Sox, if they have a Benintendi trade coming up, that would make sense, I would say, since they already have Benintendi and Alex Verdugo as corner options. Uh, Orioles, sure, I guess they're not going to contend, but if they want to use him as a rebuild, if Puig wants to use him as a rebuild and then parlay him into a trade, that could work.
Yeah.
Marlins could make sense. They have Brian Anderson in right field, but he could also play third base,
Mm-hmm.
and that could fit into. That would also be a good mix with the Cuban market in Miami. And the Astros, would make sense. As said, they're losing Springer. They're looking at losing Correa and several other guys in the coming years. So that'd be good kind of. Oh, and Brantley as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that.
Yeah.
Mets are looking at Brad Hand, who they would have had interest when he was waived by the Indians, but not because of the uncertainty with the the virus. And Liam Hendricks has apparently met with. Stop me if you heard this one before. The Blue Jays.
Hmm.
And I've said with him that would be another good buy for the Mets. That the Mets could get Bauer and maybe Jackie Bradley Jr. and a couple of relievers on the cheap end. But the better option would be Springer, Tanaka, and Hendricks, because that deepens the rotation. It gives them solid center fielder, middle of the order back, and then in Hendricks, that is a surefire closer option. Hendricks, a guy who is The last 2 years has pitched to a sub to a 1.79 ERA with uh, with 39 saves. His track record since coming to Oakland has he has really taken off the last 2 years. His track record before has he had one great season in Toronto in 2015, but
Yeah, sometimes it just takes like that change of scenery and finding that right team to help unlock everything. We saw that with Garrett Cole. He was a very highly touted
yeah,
prospect, and then
yeah,
because I'd watch him in Pittsburgh, and I was just like, he's okay. Like he's got some fast stuff, but nothing I'd like trade the entire farm for.
yeah.
And then he unlocked it in Houston, and he proved it pretty well with the Yankees this past year. So
Yeah, and the bigger thing with Hendricks is that those 85 inning in those 2 years, 110 innings, 161 strikeouts. This is a
wow,
Australian flamethrower.
yeah, yeah.
Um, which also did you know that there has only been one Australian-born player who has won the World Series
Who?
with the Yankees in 2000. Or in that dynasty Yankees. I'm blanking on the name. I'll know it when I see it. Uh, is it? No, it's not. There it is. Yeah, but yeah. What do you? While I look this up. What do you think the Mets should do? Do you think they should go all in on Bauer or spread it more out on some of the bigger name on some of the other big names? And fill
I,
out a few holes.
I mean, let me pull up the Mets roster real quick because I think the Mets, like, they should definitely go out for another starter. I really think they should.
Yeah,
Um,
they have three very good options in hand. They
yeah,
could use a fourth.
like DeGrom's very good as we've seen. Stroman, I'm still not keen on him. I really am not. Um,
Yeah, he's shown
so
what tendencies of being a starter and also being a back in the rotation guy.
yeah. Um, so like they've got Dominic Smith, Pete Alonso. I think those
Yeah,
guys are fairly good.
they also have the rookie the guy Nate Pearson who really started as a rookie last season.
Jeff McNeil's pretty decent. Um,
Zoe is also very decent in the
yep,
background.
yes she is because she's a terrible dog. Um, Robinson Cano is not there no more.
He'll be a
as we've
factor in
discussed.
2022 and 2023, but not this year.
Yeah. Um, so I mean, I think they have. I mean, it's no Slam Diego, but I think they've got a decent lineup.
Yeah, and when
I
you
think
think of
maybe
yeah,
buff up on the relief pitching if you can go that way. Uh, but I think the Mets' best option is to sign Bauer. Now, I'm not saying Bauer is going to throw a sub 2 ERA and win 25 games next year and strike out 300 guys. I don't think that's going to happen. I'd say because it's a shortened season, we've seen guys, we've talked about it before. They have a really good 10, 12 game stretch, and then they start giving up some runs. Teams figure them out. Um,
but if he gives a 3.5 ERA
yeah,
with
yeah,
250 strikeouts,
yeah. I think that's totally fine. Now, would he be worth $40 million a year?
I'm not sure.
I don't think for a, a mid to low 3 ERA. I think you got to have a sub 3 ERA to have that. Actually, I think you should have a sub 2 ERA to have $40 million a year. But that's just me.
And over multiple seasons, like
Yeah,
really, it's easier to justify 40 million to a position player because they're doing something day in and day out.
yeah.
Starting
And
pitchers every
considering
fifth day.
this has really been Bauer's, I guess, second really good year.
Yeah.
And he's been in the league for like what 7 or so years now.
Uh, 8 years, I think.
Yeah.
He
So
came in as a rookie with the Diamondbacks as a 21-year-old.
yeah. So it's not like he's a proven winner. I mean, we've seen plenty of guys pitch really well later on in their career. Randy Johnson did great, stuff like that. So maybe it's just it took him a little bit more time to figure things out, and he'll do it in the back half of his career.
Yeah,
Sure, maybe he'll be worth it.
It's just the problem is it's really hard to tell that
Yeah.
from just one or two things.
Yeah, so I think the Mets have to go with Trevor Bauer. And if he's looking to do his 5-year deal like it's now been talking about, I guess you have to go that route. Lock him up for long. But I don't know if he'll have any opt-outs or something, like he wanted to do his 1-year deal, so...
I would say a contract like Garrett Cole's, 9-10 years, but with an opt-out after 4 or 5.
Yeah.
But I still think Bauer's best option is the Angels. That if you're the Angels, you've constantly been striking out, and you suddenly see not only have the Dodgers just win the World Series, but the Padres might have won the offseason, depending on what else happens.
Yeah.
And you're looking at your roster, and what has been the one thing that's been consistent the last 5 years of Angels rosters?
That their pitchers keep getting hurt?
The starting pitching has been atrocious, whether from injuries or underperformance. And the best thing they could do to pivot, especially because it's looking like that there's going to be a regime change in the AL West with the Astros on the back end of their dynasty. You look at the other 5 teams in that the other 4 teams that the Rangers are restarting their rebuild, and the Mariners are starting to say that not this year, but next year we're gonna start looking to get back into it. You don't want to see this moment pass by and don't reassert your dominance in the division. That this is, if they can get Bauer, that the Angels can.
Yeah, I mean, because their top 2 pitchers right now are Otani-san,
who you don't know what you're going to get from now after
Yeah.
after 2 injury-ruined seasons.
Yep, and then your number 2 is Dylan Bundy.
Which could be, but you don't know.
Yeah, I mean, his track record doesn't speak too well, but like...
I mean, I would say it just because the track record of pitchers escaping Baltimore has been very good.
Yeah.
As of late, between
Arrieta.
Arrieta and Kevin Gausman.
Yeah.
But
So maybe. I mean, like, he did turn around like a fairly decent shortened season.
Yeah, and they also have
3.29 ERA across 11 games.
Yeah, and they also have Griffin Canning, Andrew Heaney, Jaime Barria. So that's a good solid group of number 2s and 3s, but they really need that standout ace. And
the only thing though is how much more money can the Angels take on though?
Well, actually, I think it depends on how much Artie Moreno wants to spend. So let's see.
Aren't they still on Pujols' contract, and who were they still from the Nationals last year?
So here's the contract. They only have 100 before arbitration. They have 122 million. With arbitration, they'd have 55. So
it's actually not as bad as I thought.
So if this would be their only big spending, they could do it. And they could probably trade around. And looking upcoming, this is actually the last season of Pujols' contract. That's this season, and then next season they lose Justin Upton. So that in the next 2 years they're shedding $60 million in payroll. As for their arbitration class, Heaney is in his last arbitration season, so he'd be a free agent. Dylan Bundy, also a free agent. Not the most ideal, but you get what you can get. And then, so the only really contracts that are solid on the books after 2022 are Trout and Rendon, which combine out to about they're hefty. It's $80 million in 2 players, but so you ask the question: Do you want to tie up basically 120, 130 million dollars in three players, three very good players, but still that's 2/3 of your payroll in just three places, and then you have to kind of skimp out everywhere else. So that would be where I may say no, but it's all also, as I said, that this might be the time they're able to strike, and then maybe if when fans come back, maybe they can dip over the luxury tax line for a year or two, uh, and then just rotate out with middle. Because if you have Trout, and Rendon, and then Bauer, and then you have 80 million for the rest of the roster, there are enough players out there, and also don't forget they have several great prospects coming up like Jahmai Jones.
Yeah, I think that's if they're going to take the Bauer option. I think they have to rely on the prospects.
Yeah, Jahmai Jones
and go cheap for a couple of years and try and make use of whatever time like Trout has left.
Yeah, Jahmai Jones, Joe Adell, they can probably they can definitely bargain basement out some others with what the rest of there is. That it would be hard, but that would be definitely doable.
You know what was really hard and not doable?
Mm-hmm.
Notre Dame versus Alabama this past Friday.
Oh yeah, other things aside from baseball happened, right?
Yeah, so let's.
Oh, before we do, the guy I was thinking about, Fran Lloyd, was on the '96 and '98 Yankees.
Okay.
Only Australian to win the World Series.
Well, there you have it, folks, or Dad.
Crikey.
So yeah, no. On New Year's Day, we had Notre Dame versus Alabama, and oh boy. Well, I guess let's rewind a couple weeks when we had Notre Dame versus Clemson. Both were undefeated. Clemson quarterback Trevor Lawrence was in the COVID protocol, missed a game. That game went into overtime, so Clemson didn't even have their starting quarterback, and they racked up a bunch of points against Notre Dame. Notre Dame won the game, but I wasn't really too impressed with that. Especially with that performance. So when it came to Clemson versus Notre Dame for the whatever bowl game they were in, I had no faith in Notre Dame. Notre Dame lost that. Clemson did that, jumped to number 2. Ohio State got a couple exceptions, got number 3. Alabama, of course, at number 1, going 12-0, with a very good wide receiver and a very good running back. But yeah, no. So Alabama beat Notre Dame 31-14, and then Ohio State kicked the crap out of Clemson 49-28. I mean, don't get me wrong. Trevor Lawrence did not have a bad game whatsoever. 33 of 48 for 400 yards. That's on the Clemson defense right there. Justin Fields for Ohio State had a really, really good game, but as my dad and I have discussed, we're still not too keen on him. We'll have to see what he does against Alabama, but we both have Alabama winning the game. But I guess we'll have to see in the upcoming days. So basically, it's sort of been... I have such a problem with college football. A lot of people really like it. They're like, it's crazy, it's great. And I'm like, there's too many teams. It's sort of how I feel like the United States. There's 50 states. It's too big. It's too crazy. I mean, we got the Electoral College going on, not to be too political, bros, but it's just too much in college football.
Many cooks.
You have teams like Alabama playing like some random team from like the Dominican Republic that's like never played football before, and it's like, we just won 49-0. It's like, well, yeah, because you have a team of players that knows how to play the game, and you're playing against like these guys who like
you're playing against people from a baseball country.
Yeah, it's like, what do you expect? Like these divisions are garbage. Notre Dame, because of COVID, they had to join Clemson's division. So whether they're gonna stay there, I don't know. But like some of these teams just don't play anybody. And yeah, the teams get upset a few times. Yeah, it happens. Your team has a bad game, the other team has a really good game, whatever. Um, but for the most part, you're not going to see Alabama lose to like any dopey teams like that. I mean, they played. I'm looking at their schedule. They played a number 7 ranked Florida team, a 22 ranked Auburn team. Uh, Played a number 3 Georgia team and a 13 Texas A&M. But like the rest of these games are like all unranked opponents. The game against Duke, they won 63-3. I mean, Duke's a basketball team, sorry, Kentucky, not Duke. They're a basketball organization, not football. Some teams are both. I'll give you that, but like for the most part, like some of these teams they're playing just they shouldn't be playing. It's a waste of time. Sure, you want to showcase the teams and like have a big blowout, but like it's kind of boring for the other team at that point. It's like, oh, we got to play Alabama now. Great, that's gonna be a loss. Let's just like not show up. I don't know. It just really bothers me, college football. For years it was top 2 teams would play each other in the bowl game, and that was it. And then these last several years they've implemented top 4 teams. But honestly, there's so many college teams. It's not like in the NFL or some of the other pro sports where there's only like 30 teams, and you can like take a third of them and let them like fight it out to make it to there. There's hundreds of college football teams, and you're telling me only 4 teams are gonna play? I mean, like I said, Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, these last couple of years have been leagues above everybody else. LSU when they had Joe Burrow, and you see that with college football too. That like you have one good quarterback who like makes or breaks a team, and it does it so it's a lot more unpredictable, and you only have a couple of years to really fill out that window. But I don't know, I just can't stand.
It's the problem of in football they can't really do like an basketball NCAA tournament with needing a week between. That's impossible.
Yeah.
To do it unless you cut into you shorten their regular seasons.
Yeah, and at that point, then you're only playing like 6 games, and it's like, all right, well, who do we play? Just their divisional opponents.
Yeah.
I don't know. College football for me is just like a really huge mess, and I just don't.
Is that why you went to a school with no college football at all?
We went undefeated every year.
You had no team.
But we didn't lose. We didn't lose.
Yeah. I know you were talking about college football, but your argument could also apply to what happened to the poor Miami Dolphins in Week 17.
Oh, all right. Yeah. So let's talk about some of the NFL football.
Yeah, because the Dolphins were probably the team that was most disappointed by their schedule, because while they ran into the Bills, the people they needed to leapfrog for a wild card position. The Colts had the Jaguars, the Ravens had the Bungles, and the Browns had a Steelers team that looked very different than the one for the first 2/3 of the season.
Yeah. Well, also the Steelers didn't really play some of their top players, and
which they didn't need to. They already had their
they already locked that up. Buffalo already had the tiebreaker over them, so they would have to win, the Steelers, and Buffalo would have to lose. And at that point, you don't even get a bye week at this point anyway, and it doesn't really matter who you're playing at this point. So it didn't really matter what they were doing if they won or not. Why risk the injury?
Exactly.
So the Browns, I mean, they should have beaten the Jets 2 weeks ago, or I guess a week ago, but they didn't because they didn't have their wide receivers, and that's so big for chemistry. If you don't have chemistry, then you're in trouble. But yeah, so Miami finishes the season at 10-6, and we've seen 10-6 teams not make it before, like the Cleveland Browns about like a decade ago. Which this is Cleveland Browns' first playoff appearance in 18 years, which now leaves my New York Jets the team with the longest streak of 10 years without a playoff appearance.
And also still can't beat the Patriots.
So, yeah, let's talk about the Jets a little bit, too. So they're 0-13, and they're up against the number one defense in the league against the Rams, and the Jets won. Like, all right, so Trevor Lawrence hasn't specifically announced he's coming out of college yet. So he has 2 losses in his professional college, I guess professional, in his collegiate career. He's got 2 losses. One is the championship game last year in LSU, and then this year he fell short in the playoffs, but he made the playoffs both times, getting an undefeated record in the regular season. All 3 years he's played. So, and that's not including the game he didn't play against Notre Dame earlier this year. So it's not official he's coming out. It looks like it because he seems like he's pro ready, and why risk another year at college unless if he doesn't think he's going to make that much money with the COVID shortened season, or the COVID strapped for cash season, and maybe he stays back another year to get more money. I don't know, but it's interesting to see what's going to happen. Who's going to be taken where? We'll have to see, especially in this final bowl game with Alabama. How well Justin Fields does, if he looks like he's ready, and who the Jets should probably grab at number 2 because Jaguars have the number 1 seed, which for a while when the Jets beat the Rams, they're like, oh, well, the Jaguars have the weaker strength of schedule. But when I looked at every standings on ESPN, Bleacher Report, NFL, wherever, they would rank everybody, and who is at the bottom? The New York Jets, because of the conference schedule. Now, everything, it's supposed to be head-to-head games, and then in your division, and then similar games, and then conference games, and then strength of schedule is supposed to be like the last one. And basically, like, I don't understand why it was flipped for strength of schedule to go ahead of conference record, because the Jets had beaten the Rams at that point, and the Jaguars had beaten the Colts. So the Jets didn't have any wins in the AFC, but the Jaguars did. So I was super confused and kind of mad that like no one was addressing why this was a thing, and I couldn't find it out. I've scoured the internet, and it just sort of like blew my mind that the Jets would be ranked last, but they still wouldn't have the number pick. I mean, they don't anymore. It's because they won more games, but it sort of like frustrated me.
Yeah. So who will the Jets and the Jaguars ruin this year?
I don't know.
Considering
they said that's why Trevor Lawrence lost the bowl game to Ohio State, because now the Jaguars had him.
I mean, you saw what happened to Joe Burrows. So
yeah, I mean that's a freak injury. That's not like him not playing well.
Well, they also had no defense to protect him.
Yeah, so I don't know. We'll have to see what's going on. I mean, to shake it up even more, the Dolphins had Tua, but they didn't have Fitzmagic to help try and close the game out, but I don't think that would have mattered. Josh Allen was just too on fire. My Super Bowl pick is Packers over the Bills, because both those quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers and Josh Allen, are both having phenomenal years, doing really good things, as we saw with Kansas City. Yeah, they're the team to beat, but if you can get a good high-scoring game, that's anybody's up for grabs.
We'll get to our Super Bowl picks in a bit. I'm not sure who I'm gonna bet for yet, but let's take it one round at a time. This coming weekend is the wild card round, and we have 6 great games that can be ruined by surprises. So in our I'm forgetting who's in what. In our AFC conference wild cards, we have the Colts versus the Bills. We have the
Browns versus
Yeah, the Browns,
Steelers, and then
Steelers.
Baltimore and Tennessee.
Yeah, I wish Google Scores put everyone on the right side instead of mixing them. So, out of these, I'm saying that we kind of have right now our things that it's going to the Bills, Tennessee, and who's the other one? Bills, and Pittsburgh are all the
Home teams.
home teams. The Steelers Browns going to be interesting because they just played each other.
Yeah. I mean, the Steelers didn't have all their players, and it was still a fairly close game, only losing because they didn't get the 2-point conversion. I think the Steelers are going to be fine. Big Ben got his week of rest amongst another couple key guys. T.J. Watt's coming off of a possible Defensive Player of the Year award to join his brother, J.J., to be both Defensive Players of the Year. So I think the Steelers should have the edge. Keyword is should, but my dad, a lifelong Steelers fan, and me, a semi-Steelers fan, know the struggle of they should easily win this game means they're going to do a lot of stupid things and make this like more stressful than it needs to be instead of a nice like 30-10 win. Buffalo Bills over the Colts. Colts don't really impress really anybody. Like they've won games. Phillip Rivers is there, but like nothing really like jumps out to me about the Colts.
They have a good defense. If I remember.
Yeah.
So if
like Ty Hilton's an okay wide receiver, but like I don't see like anything like too crazy about him.
They kind of just exist.
Yeah, I mean they won 11-5, so I mean they obviously won some games, and as we've seen with Buffalo, if Josh Allen is on point, Buffalo's going to score 30 points. But if he's cold and doesn't live up to what he did in this regular season, Colts can easily take that. Steelers versus Browns, I said Steelers should win that. Tennessee versus Baltimore. Derrick Henry of the Titans clips 2,000 yards as I think like the 7th running back to ever do that, something like that. He's been a beast these last 2 years for Tennessee, literally putting the team on his back. But Baltimore scares me. I think they're the biggest wild card because they finished 11-5, but for a while they were just sort of like floating around 500 for a little bit. They were like not getting everything all together, and I don't know if Lamar can put it together. I mean, he rushed for 1,000 yards. I think he's the first and
he rushed for 1,200. Remember, 200 was going to the bathroom in that one game.
So he's the first quarterback to have back-to-back 1,000 rushing yard seasons. So he can definitely take matters into his own hands, and this could just be who rushes for more yards, Derrick Henry or Lamar Jackson. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. I think if there's going to be an away team to beat the home team, I'm going to pick the Ravens over Tennessee.
See, I disagree with you, especially looking at their last one. Yes, they went on a good run, but let's look at what they finished it. Week 17, Bungles, no one cares. Week 16, looking at it, the Giants also don't care as much. Week 15,
Jaguars.
Yeah, Jaguars also don't care.
Yeah, but sometimes it's just that confidence. Like I know, I understand you're playing teams and whatnot. Like they lost to the Steelers both times. They lost to the Titans already, but that Titans game was a close one.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and they played but the only game that they really played the one in the last that was on there was the Browns game, and that was very close. Like the latest I'm going back to, I'm already going back past their loss to the Jets and not the Jets, the Patriots in Week 10. Like Denver, they won, but that was another close one, and that was back when Denver was not doing anything. So I'm suspect of it that their wins are because of the caliber of opponents they face, and in the one wins they have, it's so close. I don't think they're going to get past King Henry. I don't think so. I think if you're going to see an upset, it is the Brown Steelers game, just because Steelers have been rather inconsistent as of late. I know that this past week they didn't play all their starters, but it's the body of work since they lost their undefeated season has not been looking great.
Yeah, I see what you mean by that. I'm just sort of still on the. I think if you have with the Steelers and whatnot, uh, I think that's more of a. I don't want to say they're more evenly matched, so it's not going to be an upset. Um, because people know how the Steelers seem to play. So if they're going to lose, it's because it's like it's the Steelers. It's just they're not playing the way they should be.
Days of our Steelers.
So I don't think it's more of an upset that way. I think it's more of, as you said, the Ravens have been beaten up on some bad teams. So
and they haven't looked that convincing in their wins on competitive teams either.
So I'm not sure. I mean, even with Tennessee, they've had a couple easy games. So I mean, they flip flopped with the Colts. They had a close game with the Browns.
They got embarrassed by the
Jaguars
Packers.
and the Lions. The Packers kicked the crap out of them. They had a close game with the Texans, which just to talk like real quick about the Texans and Deshaun Watson. Let's just run through his like stat line real quick. So this year, 16 games. He had 382 completions out of 544 attempts. That's good for a 70% completion percentage. 4,823 yards, 33 touchdowns to only 7 interceptions. He was sacked 49 times, which is definitely down from his 2018 total, where he got sacked 62 times, with a rating of 112.4. I mean, if Aaron Rodgers didn't have his ridiculous season, and the Texans were able to win a couple more games,
if the
Deshaun Watson would probably be MVP.
Well, that would be if the Texans had.
And this isn't like this is like the first time he's thrown up numbers like this. He's got a career 67 percentage throwing. That's pretty good. He's got career 104 touchdowns to only 36 interceptions, and his career rating is a 104.5. I mean, those are some really good numbers. Other than his injury-shortened first season, he missed one game in 2019 over his first 4 years here. Well, even in his rookie year in 2017, he was looking really good, having 19 touchdowns. He had 8 interceptions, but like you're a rookie, you're gonna make some mistakes like that. But he still threw for almost 1,700 yards in 7 games. I mean, Deshaun Watson has proved right now he is the real deal, and he's doing this with like no one around him. He almost threw for 5,000 yards and lost to DeAndre Hopkins, who led the league in receiving yards this year. So Deshaun Watson is an incredible quarterback. Expect to see him win an MVP, and if the Texans can figure out their front office and surround him with some nice weapons, he's going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback with 2 Super Bowls.
Well, we'll see, but we're remiss to finish off the NFL thing without looking at the NFC picture.
Yeah.
So right now we have our NFC matchups. We have the Rams against the Seahawks in one. We have the Bears at the Saints, and we have Tampa Bay Buccaneers having to go to Washington, which is the worst team in the entire playoff picture. And because they won Tank Division, they have home field advantage. Just
remember, though, the 7-9 Seahawks all those years ago went on beast mode and upset the heavily favored New Orleans Saints.
Yeah.
So,
and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised.
That Washington defense is good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Father Time can catch up to Tom Brady just enough for that Washington football team defense to just power bomb them. And Alex Smith, as much as I want to say Big Ben deserves comeback player of the year,
It has to be
Alex
Alex
Smith
Smith.
has rallied. Now he hasn't played in as many games as Big Ben. He's only played in like 6 or so. Um, but he's rallied this Washington football team. I know playoffs don't count towards these awards, but Alex Smith has been one hell of a quarterback throughout his entire career. He's been a game manager. Um,
Just a
he's
story.
never done anything really wrong. It's just he's been sort of unlucky. I mean,
He
he
nearly had
came
his
in.
injury.
Yeah,
Nearly had a career-ending injury,
yeah,
and 2 years later, he's now back. That's not just comeback of the year. That's comeback of the decade in my books.
yeah. Like, I mean, the 49ers, when they selected him number one overall, I think 2005, he was on like an 49ers team, and then all of a sudden, some guy named Kaepernick showed up and took over the job and lost the Super Bowl. Um,
And
uh,
then did a few other things.
and then, yeah, and then he goes over to Kansas City and forms a really good tandem with Andy Reid, and then all of a sudden it's like, we've got this guy over here, Patrick Mahomes. He doesn't look too good in his first rookie training camp, but his second year he was just like, I'm gonna be better than everybody, and just upstages everybody. Now has a $500 million contract.
Yeah.
So Alex Smith has just been upset by some like really good quarterbacks everywhere he goes, and it's not really like his fault. The teams just seem to find like gold mines. So
Yeah.
it's sort
yeah.
of unlucky on him. So I I want to say the upset could be Washington, but Tampa Bay should win. But who knows what COVID wants to do?
Yeah, and at
Rams
the same, yeah.
Seahawks. Seahawks should win, but depends on which Seahawks team wants to show up. And the Saints should kick the crap out of the Bears. Trubinsky's not good enough. He might be 6-2 this year playing, but it's not going to happen.
I honestly think that the upset will be in the Rams Seahawks game, mainly because that Seahawks defense has been porous all year, and while the Rams are kind of the AFC version of the Colts, and that kind of they exist, but I could see them running through that porous Seattle defense. Tampa Bay, yes, they've scored 90 points in the last 2 games. Against the Falcons and the Lions, which doesn't tell you much, but still that's impressive. They also Tom Brady has also just has been prone to out of nowhere blunders. Like, remember the turnover game several weeks back, where he just kept doing turnover after turnover.
That's what I'm saying. Father Time can hit him, and Washington's got a really good line. I mean, who's their defensive lineman here? Chase Young. When the Steelers had to play the Washington football team a couple weeks back, Mike Tomlin walked up to Chase Young and said, "I hope we're never so bad of a team that we get to draft a guy like you, because Chase Young is that good. He's scary good, and if he can sneak up on Tom Brady, strip sack him, run that ball back, Washington's going to have one hell of a game."
Yeah, and then as for the Bears,
They should not win this game.
They should
the
not.
Saints should win this game. If they do not, Drew Brees should immediately, after the game in the press conference, say he's retiring because he's too ashamed to have lost to this Bears team.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
This is the Bears are a team that got to a hot start, then had an ice cold middle, and then stumbled into the playoffs.
That's that.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm saying first round. In the AFC, it's going to be the Bills, the Titans, and the Browns. And for the NFC, I'm going to say Washington, New Orleans, and Los Angeles.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Saints, Seahawks, Washington. I'm going to take all the home teams in the NFC, and then I'll take Bills, Steelers, and Ravens, and then you got to cycle in the other teams in there, the Packers. But I think it's going to be Packers versus Bills. Packers over Bills.
Yeah, I'm gonna put out the matchup I want to see, which is I want to see the Bills and the football team. The Bills because they're the strongest. The football team just so we can say the Super Bowl with the football team.
I was kind of hoping Washington would lose to the Eagles, that way the Giants could get in at 6 wins and set a new record for worst record to make it, because the Seahawks did it at 7-9, but so did the Washington football team. So no new record.
We're running
who
out.
I would like to see, Steelers, I think, versus Seattle. Those are my two teams. As for running out of time, real quick.
We should do a quick coronavirus update since we have two things to talk about that and two separate.
Yeah. So I guess we can hold off on the NBA and NHL because we're still getting a little bit of pieces, and the NBA is still sort of rolling in. But just to say real quick, the Nets looked really good to start off with, and then now they're 3-4, and Kevin Durant's out for a week with quarantining to do. So that's not looking good. Clippers looked really terrible the first couple games, getting outscored by 50 points. Actually, I think 51 points, the Mavericks, and then now they're the top of the West. And then Canada, some of the provinces are opening up, but we'll get into that next time, as this is already a very...
Well, I was going to say that it's the one that Manitoba and Alberta,
British Columbia.
British Columbia have allowed the NHL to operate. So that's enough teams that they could run that Canada division, which should start on the 13th.
Yes.
So by then we should find that out. And the other big news is this week MLB and the Players Association have both issued statements saying that spring training will start on time, and they are planning for a full 162-game season in 2021. There was talks that the owners were going to push back on that, wanted to get everyone vaccinated, but they had to get agreement from the players union, who said, we already gave 60% of our salary last year, we're not giving up a dime this year.
Yep, so we'll have to see.
And I don't blame them.
Yep. So we'll have that and more in the upcoming week for Dad.
Yeah.
All right.
So this is the first episode of 2021. It's all down. It's all uphill from here.
Yep. Hopefully.
Or downhill.
Hopefully. All right. Keep washing your hands. Stay away from people, and go Yankees.
We'll see you next time.